Hey, everybody. I'm Cynthia Barnes, founder and CEO of the National Association of Women Sales Professionals. And it is time for another lovely episode of NAWSP's Stories and Lessons from the Front Lines of Sales Leadership, where we gather the top women in sales who are in sales leadership, who are breaking barriers, busting them down, dancing on the glass ceiling. And we find out the good, the bad, and the ugly of what it takes to get there, thrive once you're there, and then reach back and help other women in sales get there too. So without further ado, I've got Layla and Lisa here today. Layla, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Cynthia. My name is Layla Secca. I was an executive vice president at Salesforce for 12 years, just shy of 12 years. And last year I left Salesforce and started a venture capital firm with my partner, Malin Yen, called Operator Collective, which focuses on changing who the investors are in Silicon Valley. So 90% of our fund is women, 40% is people of color, 20% is immigrants. So we're trying to shift the whole white guy giving another white guy money thing and having that be the only truth.
Yes, and in a world where investment or VC firms are typically stale, male, and pale, I applaud you.
Thank you.
Yes. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Cynthia. Happy to be here with Layla. The two L's are joining today, and I'm a 20 plus year sales veteran, dare I say 20 years, working for companies such as the Walt Disney Company, World Economic Forum, Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts here in New York, and find myself currently in a transition, but am working on some really exciting resources for salespeople that is a passion project of mine. So very happy to be here and excited to get our discussion going.
I love it. Let's start off with one of my favorite questions. In a world where women make up only 11% of sales leaders, how did you defy the odds, Layla?
So I'm not exactly a sales leader. I'm a product leader, but I'm friends with Cynthia, and I'm sort of a sales leader because I worked at a sales-driven company. And product's pretty lonely as far as there not being a lot of women in that zone either. I did a lot of things, but I think more than anything else, I persevered, right? I had a very clear, I wanted to make money. I never really minced words about that. Even as a child, people would be like, what do you want to do? And I would have some terrible answer, like be rich, awful answer in hindsight. But at the time, I sort of had my eye on that. So it seemed very obvious to me that a lot of decisions were being made in these rooms full of these men who seemed to be doing well because they were buying all these crazy toys. So I just sort of pushed to get in the room and happened to have good support along the way that helped that happen. But I think it was a lot of perseverance.
Yes. I'm going to come back to that because you mentioned a couple of good nuggets that I just think are gold. Lisa, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you ascend to sales leadership when there weren't a lot of people around that looked like you?
Yeah. Similarly to Layla, I think hard work was also something that I just, put the work into it. And sales was not something that I aspired to be in. I aspired, like Layla, to do really well, right? To make money. I also had aspirations along those lines. And I fell into sales at the Walt Disney Company and realized that depending on how hard you work, you can make more money. And I kind of liked being able to be in control of that, right? I kind of liked the upside of that. And I was willing to bet on myself in order to do that. So I think hard work is really kind of been my guiding light in order to stay in it to win it.
Yes. In it to win it, one of my favorite mottos. So when we talk about reaching the top or ascending to the top of your career, whatever that looks like, there have to be sacrifices. So I heard both of you say hard work, but talk to me a little bit about what have you sacrificed and has it been worth it? What have you sacrificed?
Lisa, you want to go first? You want me to go first? Look, I mean, you sacrifice a lot. Like, and I guess, this sort of comes down to when people ask about work-life balance, which I hate that question because I'm like, it's all integrated. Like if COVID has taught us one thing, there is no, I have life and then I have work and then I have my family. Like that's all BS, right? Everything is an integrated experience of how you're living your life mixed with technology and work and life. But yes, there are things I miss. Like there's a whole bunch of my kids' early life that I just wasn't around for, and like the PTA meetings, which I don't really mind. But like some of this stuff, like my husband did all that, right? And I was not as integrated into a lot of that early stuff, and some other things. But I spend a lot less time thinking about what I missed, and a lot more time thinking about what I gained.
Perspective.
I'm a baller. Like my kids look up and they're like, my mom's a baller. And I have 2 little white boy children, right? So like, my hashtag is raising the new white man. Like I'm trying to show a different example for how people can think about female professionalism, different people rising up, different ethnicities, different races, different kinds of people, not just white guys running the show all day long. Like, and look, I married a white guy, I made white guys, I like white guys, I got no problem. But like, enough. You don't get to just run the whole thing all the time.
Yeah.
You're funny.
Love that.
Yeah.
Lisa, what sacrifices have you made?
I think probably many that I don't even recognize as sacrifices. I think like the 2 main ones that I think about is I got married when I was 38, right? So socially that was very late. I was like one of the last of my friends to get married. And I think a lot of that had to do with, I was really pursuing my career up until that point. I mean, I definitely dated and I had lots of opportunities, but I really wanted someone that recognized how important my career was. And that was really hard to find, right? So I'm a Gen Xer, and, I would remember going, and I actually wrote a book about dating because my dates were so horrible, but I remember going on dates and like guys wouldn't even ask me what I did for a living. And it really bothered me. It was like, and I knew that I had to find someone that I really could, that could appreciate kind of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I finally met that person, right, at 38, which it was great, right? It was awesome. But I think that forced me into maybe a path that, didn't allow me to have children, or didn't allow me maybe to have a more traditional life, if you will. And I think a lot of that had to do with my passion for working and for kind of climbing the ladder, if you will.
Yes. And I've heard that plenty of times from women saying, I had to make a choice and I chose my career. And then by the time it came for me to have a family, it was too late. Mm-hmm. And I hear that too often. So I applaud both of you for being intentional about having and creating the lives that you want.
Totally.
Yeah, because I believe that our families don't necessarily want 100% of our time, especially if you have teenagers, they hate us. But what they want is 100% of our attention while we are with them. And that's really what they're asking for. They don't want us 24 hours a day. So I think it is possible to have the loved one, the family, and to be who we want to at any given moment. Yeah, I think that is possible. If you had an opportunity to talk to your younger self, what would you tell her about career, about life, anything at all?
I would say, like, just don't worry about it. It will all work out in the end, right? If you put your hard work and your effort and you have your goals, it will all work out in the end. And there will be bumps in the road. I mean, I've lost jobs, I've had jobs, obviously COVID going on. Like, you are enough to get yourself through it. And oftentimes we don't have that confidence when we're younger. At least I didn't have that confidence when I was younger.
Sure. We think everything's a catastrophe. Go ahead, Layla.
I was going to say almost the same thing as Lisa. So, like ease off on yourself, Layla. Yeah. You're fine. You're going to be fine. Like everything's okay. It's okay that you're chubby. It's okay that you didn't get that job. It's okay that you got laid off. It's okay. It's all going to be okay. Like,
Yeah,
and
it all works out.
yeah, but it's hard in those moments. It was hard when I got laid off the first time. I was like, oh my, my head exploded. I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how to get unemployment. A lot of these things when they first happen, you feel like you got knocked. But if you can roll with it, you'll do much better. Yeah. And it'll be a lot easier.
Yes.
Totally.
So there are plenty of studies that talk about how women will see a job description, and unless they meet X percentage of qualifications, they won't apply. Yet on the converse, the men will look at it and go ahead and say, yep, that's me. Have either one of you ever taken or accepted a role for which you didn't feel that you were qualified?
Yes.
How did you? Okay, so if you took a job and you didn't feel like you were qualified, what did you do to overcome that bully that told you weren't qualified? What did you do?
I mean, look, a lot of it was just fake it till you make it. There is a bit of that. Like, it's not all fake it till you make it, and people that run on that only fail. So, but there is a bit where you just gotta like swagger a little and walk in the room like you belong there, even if you don't feel like you do. And I think as a woman and as a chubby person and as a whole bunch of things that I've had in my life that I've carried around, I've learned how to walk into rooms where I didn't feel like I belonged, or I'm funny, I can make everyone laugh, I can like do all these sorts of things that ease off how I sort of move into the room. But, there were many times where I was just scared out of my mind. Like, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't call on me. Like, call on me as a professional woman. Like, worried that my CEO is going to call on me. I'm like almost 50, right? Like, what are you talking about? So, like, imposter syndrome is real. All of that is real. And it's not like some mean thing. It's built into society. Like this is built into society. Like, I did equal pay at Salesforce, and a big reason why I went to the CEO and said the women weren't paid the same as the men, because when I finally realized that all the guys were asking for more no matter what they were offered, I felt like someone had hit me in the head, because I'd never asked for more, because I was not raised to say, give me more when someone gave me something. I was raised to say, thank you. I didn't think I earned it. I thought it was being given to me. Like a present, like a gift.
Right. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
Like, exactly. My mother would have killed me if I said, this isn't good, give it, I want more. Crazy.
How dare you be greedy? Yeah.
Right. Or disrespectful, or not polite, or whatever dumb thing I was taught.
And we learn that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. Right? So when you go back to, okay, I wanted to, you said you were motivated by money, yet society had you believing that it was impolite to ask for more.
Right?
How do you come up with this? Well, I'm going to ask.
I think practice helps, right? So to Layla's earlier point, early in our careers, we're knocked down, and the more that time happens, the more confidence you build and the better you're able to do it. And it's just like anything else. The more you do something, even if it's new technology or a new skill, or, you take up the violin, whatever it is, right? The more you practice, the better you get at it. And I've noticed now in my later career years that I've negotiated more things. So not even just pay, right? Like whether it's your severance, or it's vacation time, or it's even just negotiating things in your job, right? So not even money, like things that you want to do or things that are important to you, whatever it may be. The more I negotiate those smaller things, the easier it becomes. It never becomes easy, though. I do want to clarify that, right? There is always still a little bit of a pit in your stomach after you make the ask, before you get the response, where you're like, should I have done that? And I don't know if you feel the same way, Layla, but like, I mean, even as recently a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh, I have that pit again. But you kind of have to just overcome it. And that's what the hard part is, I think, the hard part is that feeling, which is, nobody talks about the feeling. They talk about negotiation. Nobody talks about the feeling that you get in the pit of your stomach, which is what you're actually overcoming.
Yes.
And that's, what I've learned is that do it on a smaller scale. Like, do it with maybe your partner, or do it with your family, or do it in ways that are maybe not as scary or intimidating. And as you flex that muscle, you get a bit more gumption, I think, and you're able to do it.
And I think there's validity in asking small and asking for everything.
Totally.
Negotiating everything. So what's it going to hurt if you ask and then you get told no? No simply means nothing changes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Lisa's point about, like, certainly in my early years, it was all about money, like negotiating money, negotiating like time off to some degree, but really money. I had someone once say to me, like, you can eventually you hit a point in your career where you can design your professional life. Mm-hmm. Like, you can sort of design the way you want things to be. And like, when I left Salesforce, I definitely was designing my profession. I wanted to join a board. I wanted to join a nonprofit board in something that I cared about. I wanted to do something important, which is why Operator Collective came to be. But you have more power than you think you do in creating the life you want.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes. I think back to an exercise that they gave me when I was leaving corporate America. They said, close your eyes and imagine the day that you want to have. From the moment you get up in the morning, you put your feet on what kind of rug, you go into the bathroom, what does it look like? And if you can imagine it, then you can create it. And then you say, well, this life is the one that I want to create for myself. What type of job or career do I have to have that will afford me the lifestyle to do that? And you reverse engineer it. And it's from personal experience, I have created the life that I want, and I know that anybody can do it.
Yeah. It's scary. Like that pit in the stomach thing Lisa was talking about. I mean, whether you're negotiating a job or negotiating with yourself about what you truly want, like it's easy to chase money, right? Sure. In this country, you're celebrated if you chase money, right? Yeah. So, but chasing meaning, chasing impact, chasing things that are not like so easy to write on the ledger, plus and minus, that takes some more that's a creative endeavor. That's a more creative approach.
Yes. I think it's worth more though.
Hell yeah.
Totally. And I think it's also letting go of societal norms and societal pressures. And I think I'm finding myself in that place right now, and it's actually freeing. But again, it is thinking about, well, what do I want out of my life? And what are the skills that I can bring to bear that I can help other people with, that I know so well that maybe not everyone else knows? And how do I bring that forward? And how do I allow, what I've learned over this great career, how do I share that with more people? Yes. And one person in a job at a company doesn't allow me to do that, right? So how do I expand that, and so those are the questions I'm actually asking myself right now.
Totally.
But a point I wanted to make earlier, Cynthia, about negotiation, and even this kind of thread, is I have gotten really good at asking really good questions.
Yes.
And whether that's of myself or of others. And I think that is super helpful with negotiation. It's helpful with leadership, right? So I always share with people, if I'm mentoring folks, is get really good at asking good questions, which I think salespeople are naturally good at least they should be, right? But if you can ask really good questions, you can kind of navigate outcomes better than if you're just telling people things, right?
Correct.
So just another point about negotiation that I thought I'd share.
It's huge. It's huge because society does not teach women to be good negotiators. Yeah.
So true.
Can I ask a personal question?
Sure.
Yeah. I do have a personal question for both of you. What constraints have you felt in your career that have held you back, that you think originally, and it could be something that held you back or you thought it was going to hold you back, but actually didn't hold you back? Has there been a situation like that? And if you didn't have those constraints in your current role or in your life, what would be possible? So what constraints do you encounter? And if they weren't there, what would you be able to accomplish?
So I have one that's actually reared its head a few times in my career, which I know is always a good sign that you have to dig into it. And that's the politics of leadership. So I'll explain further. Let's say, well, I was in a role where my boss was just not up to par. You know, he just was not performing as he needed to perform. His guidance to me was, you're working too hard, you're making us all look bad. Okay, so that's kind of what he was, that was his MO, right? Unfortunately, you know, between me and the CEO was my boss, and oftentimes I felt an allegiance to my boss where I should have just been very honest with the CEO and said, this is what's going on, right? And not had the politics get in the way. So that would be something that I would say has been a constraint for me. I've always felt an allegiance to my leader, but I think there are certain situations where you need to be very confident with yourself and maybe go above, going outside your leadership in order to make a point or get things done or things like that. And I say that you need, it's a nuanced situation in everyone's situation, but that's just something that I've noticed for me has been a constraint in the past.
Okay. Interesting. I would have never guessed that. Layla, what about you?
So I'm sort of unapologetically myself, right? And that has been very helpful to me, right? It's like why I got equal pay done and why I've been successful professionally and why Operator Collective has done so well. There is a nuance, right? So I was always sort of like, this is who I am, take it or leave it kind of thing. What I have realized though, even though I still believe this is one of my greatest strengths, is as I've grown as a leader and my position has changed, as I've gone higher up in the organization, as I've joined the management ranks and sort of the C-level, it's not that I have to change who I am, but I do have to change a number of behaviors, right? For example, let's say something happens at work. This doesn't happen at Operator Collective so much, but let's say there's something happening at work. I can't react maybe the way I want. Like maybe I'm like, oh my gosh, in my mind, that's how I feel about what's happening. But I have to be like, no problem. We'll just get together and we'll figure out how to make it. Because if I go, then everyone below me flips out, right? Yes. So it's sort of a ridiculous example, obviously, and the ones I'm talking about tend to be more nuanced, but I do think you can stay true to who you are and still sort of rise up professionally and alter certain things here and there to be more well received. Because one thing that people don't talk about is the rules change, right? There are rules when you're an individual contributor, then there's rules when you start running a team, then there's rules when you become a VP, and rules when you move into the C-suite, and rules when you start dealing with the board, and no one knows what the rules are, and they change all the time, and no one tells you anything. But that's always happening, right? So as a professional, you have to kind of, or I have learned to hold myself as I'm walking through those new rules environments and trying to sort of navigate what's happening.
So someone once told me that of all the skills that you're hired for, political skill is the most important. You agree, disagree?
I think it depends on the size of the company, but let's be clear. You get people in a room trying to get something done together and then up the stakes and put money on top of it, there's going to be some of that. There's going to be politicking. That's just, so everyone acts like, oh, there's politics. I'm like, well, then don't go into business. Like, and then you go to like academics and they're like, oh, the politics. And you're like, okay, you're not, like, it's everywhere, in my opinion.
Right.
There are hidden rules, just like Dr. Joe Johnson said, hidden rules.
Yeah.
Dr. Joe Johnson.
He's amazing. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Hi, Joe.
Today. So what do you, I'm a voracious reader, and I believe that a lot of our success is contingent on what we are feeding ourselves. What are you currently reading, Lisa?
Oh, goodness. I just finished a Michael Balducci book.
Okay.
So I normally am reading business books all the time, but my husband the other day was like, can you just please read something that is like a story that is not about business or improving yourself or anything like that? So I did read it. I just finished it actually, and I need to find a new book. But what I'm getting from the library is Michael Eisner's book, The Ride of a Lifetime. So that's what's up next, which I'm very excited about. I heard it's a good book. But one thing about reading books, just another insight someone shared with me once that I thought was great, is that CEOs read a book a week. And I always thought, I always aspire to read, I don't read a book a week, but I aspire to be a voracious reader like that, because I think if that's good for a CEO, then that should be something I should aspire to do. So,
Right. Absolutely.
I think very few of them read a book a week. Me and you, I think that's a load of you know what, but maybe a few, but I don't know about that.
The female CEOs, they're doing
maybe the females do, but I don't know, Lisa. I don't know.
Where did they find time?
Yeah, well, I think it's when they were traveling. When they were traveling on planes, that's so pre-COVID, I guess.
Yes. Yes. Layla, what about you? What are you reading?
I only read fiction. I do not read any self-help. I do not read any political books. I live nonfiction, so I just can't. I can't do it. So I only read fiction. I'm a pretty avid reader. About like 5 years ago, I realized how boring I was becoming. I only wanted to talk about software and my kids, which is like, who wants to talk about, I mean, my kids, okay, but like software and you're really boring. So I sort of set goals for myself on reading. I'm reading a book called like The Kitchens of the Midwest right now. I like stories about people. I like, and compelling stories. I like historical fiction, so I will read that on occasion, but I don't like reading. Like I get enough about people's opinions on Twitter. I don't need to spend my personal time doing that.
It's like my life is a nonfiction book.
Exactly.
But I still read. Because I want to know how to do it faster and better and more efficient. And I would like to get a novel though, just to unplug and just veg out. Yeah, veg out. So as far as pitfalls that women should avoid, can you think of any? Because sometimes we kick our own ass.
Don't be mean to each other.
Right.
I mean, like, it's really hard because sort of the system is set up to pit us against each other when we start really succeeding. Mm-hmm. So it's real hard because you want the promotion and you want the more money and you want the this and you want the that. But don't go after each other. That's what they want. It's like divide and conquer. Like you had to stick together. You got to celebrate each other's successes. Even if you felt like you should have gotten it, you got to clap for the one that's getting it.
Totally.
That would be mine.
Totally. Mine would be when you hear the voice inside your head, which I have a term for, the itty bitty blankety blank committee. I don't know if we're allowed to say the other word, but you can fill in the blank. Okay. So the itty bitty blankety blank committee, when you hear that voice, ask yourself, would you be saying the response to a friend? Would you say the same response? And that's very common, right? I didn't make that, but like, would you say that same response to a friend?
Yes.
When that committee rears its head.
Yes. One of the things I thought about in supporting each other is how the system and society, just like you said, Layla, pits us against each other. And when we have women in sales leadership and only 11% of leadership positions are females, or we represent only 11%, that kind of perpetuates that model of there's only one available. And if I'm that woman in sales leadership and there's only one available, then I'm going to fight like hell to keep it. And I may or may not, if I'm of that mindset of lack mentality, I may not reach back to have another woman or help another woman up for fear that I will lose what I have. So what is it that as sales leaders, female sales leaders, what is it that companies can do to eradicate that sense of, well, there's only one available, I got to hold on to it? What do you think they can do?
Well, I think it comes down to culture, right? And, if you have a competitive culture like that, regardless if you're in sales or product or market, whatever, then that culture will be very much thriving throughout the organization. So I think, I worked for a company, Disney, that had a great culture, right? And basically their premise from a leadership perspective was like, treat everyone not how you want to be treated, but treat everyone how you think they want to be treated. Right. So try to understand. And that came from like a servant leadership perspective. So, they are very much about the customer, but really they're about the employee, because they know the employee is going to give good service to the customer eventually. Right. So if you treat your employee well, they'll treat your customers well. So I think it's asking, is this culture the culture I want to be in? Because I think culture and your leader are the two most important things going through your career, is the culture of an organization and your direct leader. And in order to find out if they are a right fit for you, you need to do a lot of investigative work and questioning and asking really good questions and understanding thought process. And I've definitely not done that in past roles where I should have. But if you are thinking about a new role in a new company, those would be the two things I would think about. And then if you find throughout that process that it is super competitive, or there is only one female leader, or there's no women on their board, or whatever it is, you have to align that with your values and make a decision on, does this align with my values? And is this something I'm willing to sacrifice, as I take this job or take this role?
Because I don't think anybody wants to be the token.
No.
Layla, what would you say?
I agree with what Lisa said. I think the other thing, and maybe this is because I'm sort of, I'm later in my career than a lot of people, and I know that affords me luxuries as well. But you have to learn how to notice that other people's success can be your success as well. I mean, I think we've grown up in a world where it's like, my success is all that matters. Me, my name, my Twitter handle, my this, my that. Sure. I actually think that the people I've seen be the most successful in sales are the ones that could appreciate that, that everyone wins when the deal comes in, right? And so, and the managers that did the best job of really motivating their AEs and getting people fired up were the ones that celebrated an AE win like it was their own. Because it is. You get comped on it if you're a manager, like in every company I've ever worked at. So, I think it's hard not to get scared and fearful about your position and maintaining it and getting ahead. And, but I think that's the old way things used to work. And COVID, for better or for worse, has ushered in the new way at a feverish pace now. And so you have to learn how to celebrate other people's wins and find a way to do that in order to build the next kinds of companies. Because I think more and more we're going to be distributed. You're not going to be around the water cooler. So you're going to have to find ways to reach out to people and appreciate them.
Yes. All right. Last question. How do you want to be remembered at the end of your days? What's your legacy? What would you like your legacy to be?
I would like people to think that I worked really hard to make it better for everyone, and that I was really pissed off about equal pay. I want that to be like on my tombstone. Like that's the one issue that like really pay everyone what they deserve. Like at that particular issue, I'm going to go down like mom, wife, equal pay. Like that's how I see my tombstone sort of coming up on that front. But I guess that's sort of me. Lisa?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I want to be known for just helping as many people as I can. And whether that's sharing knowledge, whether that's sharing insight, like, it took me this many years to get all this knowledge. How do I get it out much quicker for folks, right? So, how do I impart that to as many people as possible and do it in a way where it's empowering? So
yes. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, ladies. How can we reach you? How can viewers reach you, Layla?
LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, I have a weird name, so you can't find another Layla Secca. So you'll probably land on me eventually.
Sounds good. What about you, Lisa?
Lisa Scotto Pomerening on LinkedIn, and Lisa Scotto on Instagram, if you'd like.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for your time and for pouring into us, ladies. Layla, Lisa, I am grateful for you. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day. Joe, Melina, Natasha, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.